Oh, boys and girls, you know you're in for a treat when you hear that sound because it means it's time for another edition of the Rec Poker Podcast. I'm your host this week, sitting in for the one and only Steve Fredland. I'm Jim Reed, Bluffsterini in the home games. And if you want to find out more about me and the other members of the Wrecking Crew, you can go to rec.poker/crew. I'd like to thank Website Amp and the Running Aces Hotel, Racetrack, and Casino. But I am just one of a panel of wizards that have come here to talk to their favorite poker people like they do every week. So in the order of your choosing, anyone who wants to dive in, wizards, why don't you just share a little bit about yourself?
Well, I'm Chris Jones. I'm 5x5 on PokerStars and Twitter, and I am excited to talk to Ben Yu today about poker and even maybe a little Magic the Gathering.
I'm John Somsky, also known as Poker Geek MN everywhere. And tonight I have a quote from Paul Newman. A dollar won is twice as sweet as a dollar earned.
What about you?
I'm Kim Kilroy. I'm the only female member of the Wrecking Crew. And I'm happy to be here and the female presence. I have one quote from Doyle Brunson, and it is, "Poker is war. People just pretend it's a game."
I'm Rob Washam, and I'm Radman50 everywhere. I have a quote from Jeanette Walls from the book The Glass Castle. "Whoever coined the phrase, 'a man's got to play the hand that was dealt him,' was most certainly one piss-poor bluffer."
Good point, Rob. I like that. And speaking of hands that were dealt, we do have a couple things we're going to get to later, including our partnership with Club WPT and the World Poker Tour. So we've got some kind of magical stuff happening there. There's going to be a live event. There's going to be an online event. I can't wait to share some more details with that, but I'm excited for Rec Poker and WPT to be working together. And we've got our live tournaments at Running Aces. On August 14th or August 24th and beyond. We've got the road trip going down to Florida with the Run Good series. There's just a lot of cool people that we're working with today. And one of them that I think is pretty cool and I can't wait to get into is the one and only Ben Yu, who I can't wait to introduce to the show. It's ridiculous. It's taken us over 300 episodes to get Ben on the show. But Ben, thank you for joining us. It's so great to have you here.
Oh, there's definitely 3,000 people you probably should have on before. But it's great to finally be here.
That's kind. Well, I know we talked a little. We kind of have this panel up here. Some of us know you pretty well. Some of us have heard a little about you. We always like to pretend that maybe some of our listeners maybe haven't heard of our guests at all. So can you just start by telling a little bit about what got you into poker and kind of where people might know you best? I've got a couple ideas, but I'd like to hear from you.
I was like a lot of people in 2003 and 2004 watching poker on ESPN. I would be, at school or at the gym, and I would make sure to race home. I think this was before we even had TV recording, so I would make sure to race home in time to catch the episodes. And I would cover the clocks in my house because I knew, once we get to the bottom of the hour, someone was probably going to win, and I kind of didn't want to know it. So I would cover the clocks in my house and make sure to watch the episode that way. Starting in college, and in high school, we would just play home games, small cash games or $5 tournaments, sit and goes essentially with my friends, just my random high school and college friends. And at some point I just started taking it more seriously. I just started to read books from 2+2 and read the forums on 2+2. And I learned that you can actually learn how to play good as opposed to just, do what you thought was good, what you and your friends thought, intuitively was good. And I just started taking it more seriously. At that point, I was playing Limit Hold'em because it was a much bigger game. Well, it was a much bigger game than it is now in terms of how many people played it and how big it was. And it was one of the predominant things online. So I deposited, $25 on Party Poker, promptly lost that pretty quickly, playing small sit and goes and Limit Hold'em. That was probably what prompted me to take it more seriously. And at that point, I'm reading books and reading hands and other ways people think that they should play online, and starting to improve my game. And I was so in love with poker at this point in my life. I actually did another interview pretty recently, and they asked me how at that point, like how much of my waking time was either spent playing or thinking about poker. And I think it was probably over 80% is what I said. You know, if I wasn't playing, I was thinking about the hands I played or like writing them up to send to people to get feedback from them. So at this point, I was just ravenous, just anything about poker, I would devour it. If there was any news, I was following all the tournaments and stuff. Still watching all the episodes on ESPN and following what would happen at World Series every year. I would drive like 2 hours because I was still 18, 19, and 20 in college. I would drive like 2 hours to like Indian casinos where you only had to be 18 to play. This was down in LA, and I would drive to Morongo Casino, which is way out in the desert, 2 hours to the east. And I would, you know, drive there for the weekend after school or work on Friday and play, you know, 12 to 16 hours on Friday, go to sleep, sometimes in my car, sometimes at a friend's place, play another 16 to 20 hours on Saturday, again, go to sleep, wake up and play another session on Sunday, and then go back to work or school. At this point, I just loved poker and everything about it. And, you know, I was making some good beer money for college. The stuff continued. In college, I was working an internship during, I did it during winter quarter and summer. Also did it for the summer as well. I came back to it in the summer in Washington, D.C. It was an unpaid internship. I did enjoy it. Like they did offer me a job after I finished it. But halfway through the internship, actually even before that, sometimes I would come in like pretty tired and go find a bathroom to sleep in because I'd been playing poker a lot. I told my internship coordinator once that I had to miss Thursday, Friday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday for a school thing. And I flew to Foxwoods to meet some people that I had met online on 2+2, and then just play 2040 Limit Hold'em at Foxwoods for the whole week. And I just did that again. Like I played, you know, 12 to 16 hour sessions. I met some friends up there. Like we shared a room up there. You know, we talked about poker all the entire trip. I made like a reasonable amount of money, and that was the first time I thought like maybe I should just do this for a living. Maybe I should consider doing this. And that was my junior going to senior year of college. And after that point, I was pretty like, I'm going to give this a try for sure. I'm going to try to do this for a living. And, you know, since then, I'm very grateful to like everything gambling and poker has given me. I have the freedom to do whatever I want. It's not a perfect life. It doesn't come without its own flaws, but I do have all my own independence, which I didn't even realize was that important to me probably at that age. You know, going way back to what I said, starting from 2003, 2004, like the World Series was the biggest thing to me and the thing I was most passionate about. As soon as I finished school, my senior year, I came out and played a World Series event. You know, I was only able to catch like the last few events because my school quarters ended late. My school year ended late. But I played one event, the 1500 Limit Hold'em shootout, and I cashed it. I was so ecstatic. Like there was, I mean, no success in poker now even matches up to how I felt at that point, given how excited I was for poker and, you know, just cashing in your first ever World Series event. Like whenever people tell me that too, like I really understand what they like, how excited they must be and how much they must feel. And, you know, that pretty much gave me the bug, and I just wanted to play World Series events. And the next, you know, it's been 10 or 13 years since then, 13 years since then. I've been playing World Series events every year, pretty much coming from when I was 2003, 2004, just watching things on TV, and also, you know, that first cash in 2008. And even though, like, I think most people who have been around poker for a little while, who play professionally or full time, you get a little burned out at some point. And I've definitely gotten a little bit of that. I'm not as excited as I was when I was a green newcomer, but I still do enjoy it. And you know, sometimes you wish you could recapture that you could bottle that magic that you had. But I'm grateful that, you know, I look back on it pretty fondly that I was that excited to get into poker at that point. And that's kind of how I got my start. And, you know, everything has just come from that point, I would say, just, you know, watching on TV and hanging out with my friends in 2003 and 2004.
Oh, that's awesome, man. I know a lot of our listeners can kind of can empathize with that part of the story. Like I know when Hold'em got really popular, that's what it was all about, like playing those $5 freeze outs with your high school buddies and your college buddies. And I had a little game out in Halifax where we were like playing around the dining room table, the coffee table, and the bed with the door on top of it. You know, like that's kind of like what I think about when I think about like home games and people getting started in poker and getting good and developing their game. So what I want, so I guess I have a whole bunch of questions that jump out at me. You said, so you're the kind of like, you still enjoy it, but it's not as like fun, fascinating in that same way. And I know you've probably got other things going on right now. What, if someone had to ask you what percentage of your waking time are you playing or thinking about poker these days, what would you say?
Oh, wow. Well, in the last year, I haven't been playing pretty much at all with the pandemic going. Previous to that, and I would say, you know, maybe still 30 or 40%, still quite a bit. A lot of my friends are still from poker, and I still check in with them, you know, in group chats like every day they actually wake up. And I'm still thinking about, you know, whenever I see a poker hand, it's just natural to think about how you would play it, or if there's anything you can do differently, or if there's something you can learn from the situation. And I'm still pretty enamored in the poker world. So I'd say, you know, before this year and when things went kind of crazy, 30 to 40%, this was actually the first, I do ask people a lot, what's the longest they've gone without playing poker since they started playing? And my answer used to be just 1 month, and it was typically be the month after World Series every year when I was burned out and tired. During the whole pandemic, I only played the online WSOP.com bracelet events. So I took like a 6-month break, and then there was that main event, and then another 6-month break. And then I did start playing. There were a lot events in Las Vegas just like a few months ago in May and June this month that I played a ton of. But yeah, I took a long break actually, and it was kind of refreshing because the tournament schedule had been pretty full the past few years. Like, I mean, it's definitely a great thing for poker that anywhere you live in the world, there's pretty much a marquee tournament you can play within a plane flight, a short plane flight. In America, you know, there's a marquee event pretty much every weekend somewhere. I mean, at the main event level or higher, like at $1,000 and higher, definitely like every weekend you can go somewhere and play an event or series events, and that's been pretty great.
Nice. Well, and I guess I'll give you two ways to answer this question. It's about study. We're always talking about how we can get better, fun ways to learn, effective ways to use our time trying to learn, you know, because time's a resource for everybody. Recreational players, we all have real jobs and stuff like that. So when you were taking poker seriously at first, you know, books were kind of the way to go, and then videos developed. And these days, I guess, long question. How did you start studying, and how do you study now, or how would you recommend people study now and trying to improve their game?
It is interesting that you point that out because yeah, when I started, there weren't really training videos. So we're definitely in a different environment. I read most of the 2+2 books. There were like, you know, I don't remember, like Introduction to Limit Hold'em or Limit Hold'em for Beginners, you know, Poker Theory for Advanced Players. I think there are still a couple books that are still good, even for small stakes, no limit. Sometimes my friends start playing no limit and they want to know what to read. And I don't remember which ones I'm supposed to direct them to, but there are a couple out there that are definitely pretty decent. I think it's still the 2+2 books. I also just, again, was posting on the 2+2 forums. Then there were forums for everything like small stakes, no limit cash. I was posting in small stakes and medium stakes, limit hold'em. And I met a lot of my friends there. And a lot of getting better was just discussing hands with them, posting hands, asking questions in hands other people had posted. And then people would make like a theory post occasionally. I think at this point, a lot of the people don't even post on 2+2 anymore, or I've been told that the strategy content has gotten a lot worse. I would guess that, in this environment, I don't know for sure, again, because like, it feels weird to say this, but when I was learning, it was a different time.
Yeah.
But my guess is, and the way I study now, or a lot of the way I study now, is watching videos on Run It Once. And I'm not sure which videos would be the best for beginners there. I tend to watch a lot of Daniel DeVoris videos, Sam Greenwood, Lucas Greenwood videos, Chris Kruk videos. They make really excellent stuff, very advanced concepts. Like you can tell they really, really have a deep understanding of the game. But I almost guarantee that like there are some great videos for beginners on there, or I mean, all levels, intermediate. Once you have the grasp of the fundamentals, I guarantee you that they just make some of the best content there, and I'm happy to shell out the money for it whenever I decide that I want to study pretty hard. And I would guess that's the best resource.
Yeah, videos have really changed just how efficiently people can take in information, I think, and just how much information you can jam into each second of time that you spend with that. So you can see why they're taking on. We do a couple training videos here ourselves, and that's definitely a nice way to explain concepts, or we do sort of like going through hand histories. But having a more collaborative learning environment like the forums, we find we've got some forums here too with a really positive attitude, and we kind of do some posts about community and some posts about strategic learning and that kind of thing. And I think something you were saying there really stuck with me, kind of like you have to kind of ask questions and you have to be unsure, and you can't just post about things you know about all the time. You have to actually improve through other people pointing out flaws in your knowledge. So John, did you have something on that, or was it a team?
Well, yeah, I was kind of going down the same path you were going down. So in the beginning, you did a lot of posting on 2+2, working with other people. Now you're a lot more video oriented. But do you still have a group of people that you bounce ideas off or talk things through with, or do you do most of your studying just solo, or how does that work?
Oh yeah, definitely. I actually think that, yes, the number one resource that I have, and I think that people should try to develop, are just like other people who are playing or attacking the same games that you are, playing in the game, have the same goals that you do. Like those are probably the best people to ask, because there's always like small nuances that you may miss, and they'll say, oh, but have you considered this person does this a lot? And it's only by them also playing in the games, or playing in the same type of games, or playing with the same people, that they'll be able to notice that. And I have a couple or three people I try to go to for every game that I play. For every game that I play, I have a couple experts, I think, that I try to ask. And then I also have a couple of poker chats in general. And I think asking a lot of different people is important, because it's poker, it's very easy to get pigeonholed, for one person to get pigeonholed. So it's great to have get the advice from a lot of different people. But I do think that's I gotta credit most of my successes and accomplishments have largely been built on, not so much my own work, but getting input from other people and having them comment on my hands and learning from other people, for sure. So yeah, I definitely, for every game, if I come up with a tough triple draw spot, I have a couple people to ask for that. And then no limit hold'em, I have a couple chats just for that, because everyone plays no limit hold'em. So I have a lot of friends. And I think the people you want to ask, you want to ask people who, one, you respect and you think are winning, but also maybe they have different play styles, slightly different play styles. That way you get a little bit more different input. And also you want to ask, again, people who, and you want to discuss things with people who, play in the same games and, or want to play, or have ambitions to play at certain stakes that you do. It's always good when you have your goals aligned, that usually you'll just learn better in those kinds of situations.
I want to ask you about kind of expand on that a little in terms of getting advice from people who have different playing styles. One of the things I don't know your game that well, but I've watched a few tables you've been on. I really the heads up match you played through where you got second at the World Series. I've watched that through. I think there's some fascinating hands there, and I think some of them, like I would say you played them really well, but unconventionally, and quite successfully. And like sometimes I'm like, oh, I would never do that in this spot, but I really admired how it turned out and how you played it. And I was like, this is a spot where I'm not earning chips and like that kind of thing. So I kind of want to like expand on the idea of like when you're talking to these people that you trust and respect and admire, but they have different playing styles from you, and they tell you, or, like, well, this is a spot where you probably should have done X, but you actually did Y. Like, how do you like absorb that into like your approach for the next time versus like saying, well, actually no, but Y is really work that I really want to stick with Y. Like, how do you kind of balance those two things?
You tell them thank you, but I'm going to ignore your advice. So heads up, I think, is actually very interesting, and it's a very different animal. And that specifically that event that you're mentioning is actually pretty interesting because that's the first time I ever played that heads up event. And I've always actually been pretty scared to play heads up and wanted to add every year. I try to add a new World Series event that I can play to my schedule because that's just the way I feel like I can learn them all. And, I started by playing one World Series event in my first World Series, 8 in my second one, 10 in my third one, because I didn't even know how to play no limit then. So I was only limited to limit hold'em events and then mixed game events, and then eventually I added no limit hold'em events. So every year I've always wanted to try and add new events. And the heads up one, I actually wanted to play that one for 2 or 3 years, and I always got gun shy at the end. And it's just because in heads up, like there's nowhere for you to hide. You have to play every hand, and you have to play 95% of hands or 90% of hands. And if you don't, you're just going to get run over. And you do have to make pretty extreme adjustments to what your opponent is doing. If they start folding a little bit too much, you really should start going kind of crazy and playing every hand. So that one is really interesting. So yeah, that was actually the first time I had played that event. And I actually did a lot of learning in that event. And I do think one of the best ways to learn is honestly just to have a good pre-flop hand selection. Just have a good, know what you're supposed to be playing in every spot. And this applies for full ring tournaments or cash games as well. Just in every position, just know what is good. And then once you get a good handhold of that, then you can start to deviate. Again, if you notice that the big blind is starting to fold too much, now we can take this range that we're comfortable with and add as many hands to it until you feel like we've gone too far. But yeah, heads up, definitely. You can do a lot of different things. You can deviate a lot and do a lot differently. The least amount of players there are behind you, the more you can adjust. When you're under the gun, unless everyone is playing super tight, you're not going to be able to open up too much. If just the big blind is playing too tight, you can still probably open up a little bit. But once we get into late position, once we're on the button and the big blind is playing too tight, now you can raise everything and you can adjust more. So I do think this is one of the fundamental ways I approach poker. I think starting with a good strategy that you will always be protected and you will always be winning, no matter how tough the field you're playing against. Having a good starting range or having a good general strategy in general.
Yeah, and we talk about how the pre-flop stuff, that's what's going to happen the most frequently. Those are the spots that you're going to be in the most often, and they have a knock-on effect throughout the hand. If you get further into the hand with a weaker range, you're just going to have to find other places to fold those weak hands and that kind of thing. So we do harp a lot here at Rec Poker about sort of knowing your position and not memorizing your range necessarily, but like knowing where your sweet spot is. What are some other kind of like not obvious, but like low-hanging fruit areas where you think, and not necessarily beginners, but just non-professional players could make some strides when it comes to just cleaning up some of the biggest gains available to them?
Oh, I think that's a very good point that you pointed out. Yeah, these situations come up a lot and they snowball. I've definitely had people say this to me. I think the two things that people should know. One is what we've just been talking about is for the most part, people should start by playing tight until you're comfortable with doing stuff that feels unconventional to you. Starting with a tight range is probably the way to go for the reasons you stated, that, it snowballs, that you end up getting to post flop in spots where you're not going to be comfortable what to do. I do really admire the people that somehow have always been a field player that have been able to start with a very loose range and just kind of feel their way to the correct spot. But I do think that's a lot tougher road. If you think you can do that and go for that in a much tougher environment that we live in now, I do think that strategy was a lot more viable maybe 5 or 10 years ago. But for everyone else, if you don't know where to start, I think starting with a very tight range. And then the second thing I would say that I think is very low hanging fruit is when you have a good hand, you should just generally bet it. A lot of people try to get too tricky, trying to confuse their opponents. And the arguments against that are, one is they often don't need to be tricked. People tend to be curious and want to see what your hand is, and they just don't believe you. And they can't get away with their hand. So when you have a good hand, you should just bet it. A lot of times they get tricky themselves too and check behind, or they're just very passive in general. They just don't put enough money with their good hands in general. So you really have to be betting it yourself. And then there are a lot of scare cards that can come off that will kill your action as well too. So I would say a second mistake that people tend to make is just not betting their good hands good enough. Like it seems so obvious and straightforward, and it's very easy for your brain to talk yourself out of it. And there are definitely some exceptions to this rule for sure, but I would say just as a general, betting your good hands is a good way to make money.
I like that. We like general rules here. We like general rules. So let me ask you about another one then, Ben. So let's say you're sitting down live at the table with someone or at a new table, and you don't necessarily know anybody there particularly well, but you think that some players there might be more experienced than others. What are you going to be looking for that if you see it in a player, you're like, oh, this is a player that is maybe not as experienced as some of the other players here, or oh, this person's a pro. What are the kind of actions or sizings or other kind of tells at the table that make you feel like you can gauge something about this player?
First of all, I just know a lot of people in poker now.
Oh yeah, good point.
So, but if you don't know people, if you just get familiar with the poker community, you kind of know who shows up at most tournament spots, and that is probably one of your best tips for who. But for the most part, a lot of poker strategy, a lot of people play very similar nowadays to a small pre-flop raise. They tend to be pretty aggressive. They 3-bet reasonably regularly, definitely more so than with just queens plus ace king. They definitely have some bluffs. So generally, if they're a bit of aggressive, that's a pretty tell that they're going to continue to be aggressive, and it isn't just good hands always. They'll tend to, this has changed a lot, but people used to use strictly small size, bet pretty small on the flop. But now that has changed somewhat too, where people can bet bigger sizings on all streets. So that's a little bit more confusing now. But if you played a while and you learned once you watch these videos or study from books or learn from your friends what good strategy looks like, if you just see it at the table, it becomes pretty clear in a few hands whether someone is implementing those kind of tactics. And if they are, they're probably going to be a good aggressive player. And these are the players you can try to emulate too. Even when I didn't know what good strategy necessarily was, I definitely made sure to pay attention to the players that I thought were good or knew to be good. And, I just tried to emulate them. And, even if you don't have a deep understanding of what's going on, just emulating does get you some of the way there for sure.
So I want to kind of shift gears because I teased this at the beginning of the podcast, but I don't know if our audience is that familiar with you, but you're also a pretty accomplished Magic player, and I'm wondering if you can talk about how that came about. Was that sort of pre-poker, post-poker, how you got kind of interested in that, and then maybe also like how the two games intersect for you. Do you think you've learned anything about poker through Magic?
So I played when I was a kid, in like kindergarten, just at the playground table, and then I really didn't really interact with it that much from like high school to college on, and we only played casually when I was a child. And then after the 2000, I want to say 2010 World Series of Poker, I had just come off, playing a lot of World Series events, and I saw David Williams was streaming it, and I was like, oh, I remember this from when I was a kid, and I kind of got hooked on that. I didn't realize that there was such a large competitive environment that goes on, and that the game is thriving pretty hard. And I didn't realize the competitive environment did draw me into it. I do enjoy, like, I didn't realize it was a thing that people did and competed on. I made a lot of friends in it. And I do think that there are some, I think people try to compare things too much in general, but I do think there are some similarities and some lessons that I did take over from poker. I definitely just don't tilt that much when I play other games now. Like or even in real life, like I just realized that, like, I mean, I've had very absurd situations in where me and my friends are going to lose, like, I don't know, 6 figures of money based on what card comes next. Like, it's hard for me to be upset in a Magic game now, even if we're playing for something that I think is important, even if I'm playing for a seat at the Pro Tour, or, a match that's roughly worth $100 to $1,000. I just realized there's no reason for me to tilt at that or anything. And this happens when I play other strategy games too. And I think that's really important when the games are not so much in Magic or poker, but if they're like team environment games, right? It's really important to like foster a good positive environment, not tilt your teammates and not get tilted yourself in those spots. So that's one thing that I definitely carried over. And just also that I learned from poker is, like, as long as you keep making good decisions, even though the games have a lot of randomness, like as long as you continue to try to make the good decisions and do it over and over and learn how to, like, eventually you will do well and the results will come. So, I mean, it's very easy to get caught up on all the times that you got unlucky. I just try to focus on where I can improve and what I can do better. And this is pretty much, I feel like, true in all strategy games. Like, if you just focus on trying to improve, eventually you'll improve.
Actually, that kind of extends into, speaking of tilt and the idea of, like, sometimes you're running bad and sometimes I think some recreational players are often wrestling with am I running bad or am I playing bad, or am I running good or am I playing good? And, like, how do you differentiate between those two?
One of the ways I just try to think it, like, it's probably both to some degree, right? You're probably not, there are so many things you can do in poker. Like, poker is not one of those games where there's infinite decisions, but there's still a lot of decisions to be made. You could have bet, instead of betting 2/3 pot, you could have bet 1/3 pot. You could have bet full pot. You could have bet 1.5 pots. There's so many moving pieces there. I just try to focus on those so much. Like, yes, you're probably running bad to be losing however many buy-ins you lost. Like, you're always going to come across that at some point, but you're not in control of that. So I just don't try not to worry about it. And I do just try to work on those decisions, because even if you're winning, even if things are going well, again, I said, there's so many different moving pieces, like, you can consider. Like, if you just think, like, if you play, an hour of poker, live poker might only be 30 hands, right? And maybe you only play, I don't know, 6 of those. But even in those 6 hands, you probably had to make 20 total decisions, maybe. And, that's a lot to review just off 1 hour of poker alone. And, like, so there's no way that any human who plays poker possibly, like, is always trying as hard as they can be, right? Like, and that might be an unreasonable expectation, but it just shows that there's always room for you to improve. So to focus on being unlucky or being tilted that you're unlucky or losing is kind of like a waste of time. Whereas, if I'm spending most of my effort just trying to improve my decisions, like, sure, maybe I made a bad play here and maybe I've been running bad and losing. But if I'm not focusing on that and just focusing on trying to improve as a player, eventually that will happen. So I just try to focus on improving. I do think that people tend to focus on where other people played bad and where I played good because, it makes me feel better. But I think we should do the reverse. We should focus on, where did other people play good? And that's where I can learn from. Where did I play bad? Where should I improve? And as long as I'm just focusing on that, like, eventually you will get there. Like, I don't think I've ever been the most talented player naturally, but just using this mentality over and over is what let me learn all these different games, and it prevents me from getting tilted for the most part. Like, it sucks losing. I'm not happy when I'm losing, but I just keep focusing on this kind of strategy of improving. And yeah, eventually I think I got there, and I there's no reason why other people can't do that too.
So building upon what Chris was talking about, part of the problem that rec players have in particular is just coming to an objective decision about whether or not a play is good or what the best possible play is. And what makes it more difficult in poker is the fact that the results don't always match the decision. You can get rewarded for a bad decision because the cards happen to be in that realm of random distribution, or you can be punished for a good decision given the random distribution as well. So what tools do you use so that you can take a step back and try to objectively decide whether or not play A or play B is the better decision?
So for pre-flop and for like short stack tournament situations, there are a lot of there's snap shove for what hands are reasonable to shove, and there's Hold'em resources calculator they used to use, and that works for if someone opens, whether you should go all in, and then whether they or not they should call. So these are pretty basic and solved and have been for some time now, and these make it pretty basic. And for the most part, you should start by learning these and abiding by these. And then, yes, if people are folding too much, now you can go all in even more often. Post flop, it definitely becomes more tricky for sure. Once we're playing like actual poker. And in there, I think, first of all, you have to come to a reasonable agreement. Like if two people are disagreeing on whether a play is good or bad, we have to come to an agreement first on like, what do we think is in our opponent's range? What are all possible hands that they could possibly have played this way? And I think once we agree to that, it kind of becomes, depending on how many streets are left to play, how much is left to play, we can come to an agreement on like what is probably a good or bad play against that line. But I think identifying your like all hands your opponent could be playing like this, or how often they are playing possible hands like this, it becomes pretty easy to see like, oh, they probably don't have that many bluffs, or like they have some bluffs, but I should still probably just fold here. So I think identifying what, trying to read their hands and thinking of what hands they would play like this is probably the most important thing to try to ground yourself in an answer here. After that, you can kind of like reason your way through like, okay, what should I do with regard to that? And I think this kind of takes away the ego too of like, did I make a good or bad play? More just think about like what the range actually is and try to not have it be about like, oh, is my decision good or bad? Like, don't have it become like, oh, I'm a smart or stupid person. Just be like, let's just try to figure out what they have.
Yeah, it's amazing how much of poker really just comes down to, are you making good assumptions about your opponent's range? You know, like that's something, as recreational players, I bang this drum all the time, but like, we are not spending enough time working on ranging our opponents. Like, this is something that is crucial to every hand of poker you're going to play in. It's, you know, getting better at it is getting better at poker. All right, well, thanks for letting me bang that drum while you're here as well, Ben. We're coming up to our time. You've been very generous to share all this with us. Is there anything other than you're a fun follow on Twitter, if people want to go to Ben U Poker and follow him there? Where else can people reach you, and what do you have in the works that you might want to share with some people coming up?
That's pretty much it, actually. I don't actually have any content coming up in the pipelines or anything. There was a time I thought I was interested in doing that kind of stuff, and I kind of just realized that I don't care as much about clout as I used to. Like, I am very grateful. I definitely feel like poker has helped open a lot of doors for me, and I'm grateful for everything it's given me and stuff. But I've kind of just been doing my own thing and enjoying life, and I'm reasonably happy with that. Like,
Yes.
I have noticed when like content and clout have helped people or me, and I don't blame anyone else for, like, it is fun, it is, but I don't have anything like in the works or anything. I will be playing. I mean, who knows how the world works now, like what's going to happen in the next month or even year. But I should be playing most of the World Series events coming up, and probably Poker Masters as well. And given the year off, I'm reasonably excited for that. Like I said, I was burnt out a little earlier, and I usually do get very burnt out at World Series. I think the actual last two World Series I've played at over 50 something events. And usually towards the end, I had a phase where like I got sick and I slept like 36 out of 40 hours. I went to urgent care once and they just told me nothing was wrong with me and that I was probably exhausted. You know, and I was just drinking, you know, Powerade and other electrolyte stuff and just sleeping all day. So that is a huge thing that I try to gear up for every year. So we're going to probably do it again this year. And with last year off, and I haven't played mixed games probably for the most part in 2 years. So pretty excited for that.
Yeah, nice. Well, I know we're getting a Rec Poker House down there for the series this year. I'm coming down for the first couple of weeks of October, so you'll be nice and fresh, and hopefully we can connect when we're down there, and that would be great. I'm definitely looking forward to seeing all sorts of fun folks and getting involved in some of the action.
Have you had a house there before, or?
We had a condo before. This is the first time we're dipping into house territory, but it's pretty sweet. We're pretty excited about this time. Is any tips for first time house people? We've already got the billiards table and the pool outside, so we got that covered.
I don't know. I'm not sure. At World Series, I mean, I'm not sure about the house, but at World Series, like, definitely know where all the bathrooms are. Go to bathroom on every break. Be ready for like a cramped zoo. Like, try to have food planned out ahead of time. Oh, so I guess if you have food at home, that's great. Having someone clean your house is great. I mean, I know the poker houses can be kind of a mess sometimes during the summer.
What, poker players? No way. I don't believe it. Yeah, that's a good one. I like that.
I have someone who's excellent who comes clean to my house that I would definitely recommend. She's definitely come across money in my house before, and it's never missing. Like, I trust her. I love her. She's like family. Give her in the house. I mean,
give her a shout out here, or we can reach you through Twitter. What do you like? Yeah. All right. Well, we'll factor that, and anyone else who's looking for a little help down in Vegas this fall, you know where to reach out. And that sure was kind of Ben to offer to come and do some work at our place too. What a guy. All right. Well, thanks, Ben. We're going to play a little commercial break here, and then you can sign out. And we really do appreciate your time. And we'll let you know when this comes out. It should be dropping next Tuesday. So you can get a chance to catch up then. So thank you again, my man. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Ben. It was a great convo.
All right. Let's hear from our friend Jonathan Little, and then we'll see what's up on the back half.
Have you ever wondered whether you should call a preflop raise or 3-bet instead? What do you do when you have a flush draw? Do you raise it or do you just call? What do you do with ace king when you miss the flop? Are you tired of guessing about what the right play is with your particular hand? Well, my name is Jonathan Little, and I am a 2-time World Poker Tour champion and creator of PokerCoaching.com, where we offer over 1,000 interactive hand quizzes where you play a hand and then get real-time feedback from our world-class pros. Don't guess and don't stress. Just register for your free account at PokerCoaching.com/recpoker right now.
Well, I was having so much fun texting with Ben Yu there. I almost missed my audio cue. That was a fun one. I always appreciate. I didn't know Ben particularly well before we started setting up the interview, but really, really nice, friendly guy, great attitude. Chris?
Yeah, it should be mentioned. I don't think it came up in the interview. This is a 3-time bracelet winner.
I was gonna, probably should have led with
legit.
that.
He's got $7 million in earnings. He's a 3-time bracelet winner. And if you're ever wanting to play heads up poker, I really highly recommend. You got a Poker Go subscription, go watch the WSOP heads up final from 2019. It's a really good. There's a lot of tricky spots. It's just a masterclass in heads up poker. So
nice. And Kim's typing in the chat here that had a question about the Big Blind Poker Go show, but it can wait. We'll just have to have him back. Kim, we'll have to have Ben back on the show. Good excuse.
That was my introduction to him, to be honest with you. And he made the finals of that show. So that was good. I wanted to ask him about that, but that was fine.
Nice. We're doing things a little differently this week. So we have Jim and Jacob, premium members, who are here in the chat. If you feel like joining the panel for this little community session, feel free to, guys. I know you're both avid contributors in our study sessions and our other group discussions. Jacob, I'm going to drag you on screen when we talk about the home games, though. Maybe we should start with that. John, why don't you roll into what's going on in home game land? And we have the one and only John, I'm muted Somsky, doing what only he can do.
Well, I just wanted to throw back to, it's a callback comedy.
It's a callback.
Exactly. So this week we had our mixed game championship series, and none other than Spot Conlon Daniel Kennedy got his very first mixed championship series win. And then on Monday night, the other big event, and one reason why we might want to be talking to Jacob, is Keck Geek 65. Jacob Kiki won his second silver pin for the Tournament of Champions.
Wow.
So he is.
That would look like not only twice as good as this, but without the asterisk. Is that what you're telling me? He's got two of these asterisk free?
Asterisk free.
God.
And he is the second person, I believe, to join the 2-time TOC winner club.
That's right.
Really? This has been done before?
Yeah.
John, Colin Anderson.
I think it was Colin Anderson. Yeah, that's right.
Wow.
So Jacob, you're really joining an elite company here. And speaking of elite companies, Jacob's actually working at his elite company right now. And so he cannot join the panel. He can only listen in because he's got his priorities in the right place. And he's putting food on the table because we are recreational poker players here, folks. We've got day jobs. Even the panel here, we're retired. Rob Washington. So great. Well, now we've interrupted John enough that I think he can proceed.
All right, then for our nightly events, we have Benmar, Elizabeth Bennett Martin.
Canadian Invasion.
And this is an impressive 6th nightly victory. Milo Junk, Miles Hudson, got his 3rd nightly victory for the year.
He's on a roll too.
Speaking of which, partner in crime, Fergie 56, Kim Kilroy, got her 6th nightly victory.
Wow. Good God. She's on a tear. Is that because you've been working with your new Range Trainer Pro subscription, Kim? I can't believe we let Kim get Range Trainer Pro. What have we done? I just feel like we've done a real disservice to the rest of the players in the home game.
Yeah, actually, we should probably just cut her off from all poker training whatsoever. I mean, just shut off her internet.
I have my finger in too many pies.
And of course, for our next item, we have once again go back to, we've been spouting all these high numbers here. Cat Geek 65, Jacob Kiki got his 7th for the year and 16th in lifetime for the nightly events.
Guys, unreal. And he's playing in here. He's got a family connection playing in these home games as well, but there's no mercy. It's just cutthroat action from the Kiki family over here. Jacob, I think you set yourself a personal challenge to win 20 home games in the calendar year of 2021. I know you can't join the panel, but type in as John keeps going if that's correct or not, because that's pretty. You're not far off that pace, as ludicrous and ridiculous a goal as that is. But I mean that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, and I wanted to overall, for lifetime winners, Megra 44. Now this goes across all series, all events, all time. Has 29 total wins. And then Jacob Kiki comes in at 23.
Wow. And then there must be a gap before the third.
17 is the next number of wins. And that, of course, is by Colin Anderson, Gloves 1010.
All right.
You see, we have a cream seems to be rising to the top here.
Oh my God, no kidding. And I got a comment from Jacob in the chat here. In this calendar year, he's at 13, including the nightlies, the mixed games, the international series, and the Tournament of Champions. So if you count all those in, 13. That you actually are on pace. What is it? It's August 16th at the time of this recording. Just keep on doing what you're doing, brother. You're gonna crack that 20. That's insane. That would be a Recce's award show performance of the year. I think at least got to be nominated for the performance of the year. 20 pin eligible tournaments in the year. Okay, good God. Yeah, you said it, Kim. We can't let that happen. You got to step up your game. Yeah, just run, kid. We know what's really going on, Jacob. Jacob's a regular guest in our Tuesday night OPA sessions, the online play and hang, and I can see the wheels turning. I can see the wheels turning in there. I know what's going on.
Well, one last thing to say about that August 13th tournament, the last one that Jacob won. He was playing his father. It was heads up between him and his father for the win. So it was a battle of the Cat Geeks.
I love that. That's amazing.
So that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, way to go, guys.
Then we go on to Diabolicule. David Admonson got his second nightly victory for the year.
Nicely done.
Then Poker Geek MN, John Somsky, got his second daily mixed event for the year.
Is that the Saturday night practice?
That's the Saturday night practice. And
which one was that? Which game is that?
Horse. This was horse. And the thing is when I got heads up, I really had an opponent who couldn't hardly even play. And I was heads up against Kim. It was a very tough and long heads up battle.
Oh, really? I'm sure.
Yeah, but I managed to squeak out in the end and take that one down.
Awesome. But congrats to you guys.
Previously that day at the 8 a.m. tournament, Kim Kilroy got her second international victory for the year.
Very nice. And
then Trey 371, Thomas Pena got his first international victory for the year.
Nice.
And then, this is filled with all sorts of people that associate with Kim all of the time. LPP Sunday event, we had Stewie 13, Stuart Kendrich got his first LPP victory for the year. So he can contact Jim Reed at Rec.Poker or Jim at Rec.Poker and earn your free month of Learn Pro Poker.
Holy cow. Yeah, Stu, that's great. Great work, man. And yeah, Kim, this is Kim's Poker Friends Forever group that are just dominating the leaderboards here at Rec Poker. Way to go, Kim. Congratulations on keeping such excellent company. And Stu, yeah, you know it. You can email me, jim@rec.poker, and I'll set you up with your free month of membership at Learn Pro Poker with Ryan LaPlante, because that's what happens when people win the Sunday free home game here at Rec Poker. They get cool stuff. Nicely
And
done, John.
The only other reminder I have is September 18th is our next Heads Up event.
And that's at, I believe, 1 o'clock Central in the afternoon.
That'll be Saturday, 1 o'clock Central. And there is no late registration for that. So make sure you're available right away, because we don't want to have people with Heads Up tournaments waiting. So no late registration.
And that's a bracket, a ladder bracket tournament where
Correct.
we have a heads up series of matches, and the winner goes on to play in Marek Madness next March. But that's not the only reason to circle September 18th. We teased at the top of the show that there is going to be something to do with Club WPT. And again, I'm not sure how much we can actually share without Steve around here. He's the great legal mind behind this entire operation. So I know I can say that you want to circle September 18th, and you're going to want to go to rec.poker/WPT. That I am confident about. So when you hear this, maybe just go to rec.poker/WPT. Because I think you're going to find something there that I can't quite describe yet, but that you will find very interesting. And for us, we're getting the eye roll from Kim again. They told me I couldn't say it yet. They could, but I'm so damn excited, Kim. We don't plan this, I swear. But yeah, so do check that out. And let me see. I think by the time people hear this, we'll probably already be getting going in the Run Good event down in Florida. But I think that's going to be a lot of fun. We've done some work with some staking partners down there. So if you're thinking about staking or getting staked or investing in other players, you can go to rec.poker/staking and check that out. What else is going on in membership land here? And we got a full group here. Anyone can just jump in. Chris Weir, why don't you jump in first and tell us what's happening in the focus and the seminar and all that good stuff?
Yeah, so we're gearing up for our next seminar. We had a really great one. If you are a premium member, and even if you participated, you should really watch the summary video where we had a fantastic contribution by Daro Kearney, who broke down one of the hands. And we're hoping that that's kind of a trend that is going to happen out of these every month. And I think we've got our next person lined up. I think, I don't want to quite announce it, but I think we do. Oh, I can announce it? Okay. So Ryan LaPlante is going to of Learn Pro Poker is going to do our next breakdown, sort of the pro breakdown. Take one of the hands that happens, and that'll be part of that final package we pulled together.
Yeah, it's a hand that the premium members play against each other. We get these pros to come in and analyze the hand and tell them how they could improve for next time, according to this one little spot that Chris draws up. It's like, I want them to pick my hand.
So yeah, it'll be great, and we're going to be. It's kind of like now the last time we did about sort of approaching the bubble and making the money. This is going to be really focused on that time between when we've made the money and really trying to put ourselves in position to arrive. It's not going to be at the final table, but we want to try to put ourselves in position to arrive at a final table with a healthy stack, with an opportunity to win the tournament. So it's going to be that time in between sort of making the money and before we get to a final table. That's really what we'll be focusing our time and effort, the scenario we draw up for the players. So it should be a good one. And check it out. If you don't know what we're talking about, the information's up, and you want to join the group on the Rec Poker website, and sign up if you haven't, and join us there.
Yeah, that's going to be great. And Chris is also running our the focus session where we're working with a premium member each month. I was just emailing with Dan, and we're going to be taking a look at a 7-7 hand that gets pretty interesting. So I'll work with Dan. We're going to kind of build some ranges pre-flop and through the flop. And then Chris is going to take it from there and do some solver work and take it beyond. So I'm so excited about this focus program. It's a great way learning together. That's what we were talking about with Ben, right? Talking with other people about specific problems. So that's phenomenal. I'm excited about that too. Rob, what's going on? I know by the time you got you back mic'd up again, so you're hitting the book study again like you never left.
Yep, we by the time you hear this, we'll have had session 8, of Modern Poker Theory by Michael Acevedo. That's coming up in our time in 2 days. But by the time you hear this, it'll have been gone, then and gone. But we're playing every first and third Wednesday of the month at 6:30 Central Time. We have a book study session. And right now we're doing Modern Poker Theory by Michael Acevedo. It's really intense. We get a lot of participation. I know some of the people in the panel here are there every time we have a book study, and we go down some pretty deep rabbit holes. We've been going on this since, I think we started this in March, wasn't it?
It was the spring, yeah.
Yeah, I think we started in March. Now, we've had a couple of hiccups in the last month. We've had a few hiccups and missed a few sessions, but we're going to get back to it hot and heavy. And I think it's going to be a lot of fun. If you've missed any of the previous sessions, you can find them on Rec Poker. There's a group, a book study group. You can go in there and you can see all of the previous sessions and get caught up with where we're at. Do your due diligence, do some studying, do some reading, and get ready to dive into Modern Poker Theory with Michael Acevedo.
That's going to be great. It's been a lot of fun coming along and reading along with that. And this podcast is actually going to come out on Tuesday, the 24th. And I know a little later on that evening at 6:30 Central, we've got the Pet Vet Hand History Review session. So I'm looking forward to that. Kim, you want to just talk a little bit about what goes on there and what else you might be up to?
Right. Well, we will talk about some hands if I get any members to submit any hands.
Yeah, people got to go over to the forum and put some hands up for Kim to
Otherwise,
look over
we'll just talk about my hands.
Hey, we like that idea too.
But I have some really interesting things coming up. I've got some new programs I'm working with. One's called Check the Side, which I'm going to introduce the members to. And the other one's another, something called Odin. And it's a solver done for you. So I'm going to introduce the group to that as well.
Cool.
So that'll be exciting. If we don't have any hands, we'll just be talking about those programs.
Nice. And people can go to rec.poker/petvet if they want to find out more about Kim and her groups and everything else that she's getting up to. Just like you can go to rec.poker/Jim Reed or /John Somsky or Chris Jones or Rob Washam and find out about the rest of the crew here and what we're all getting up to there. So let me see. We laid a lot on some folks today. What do you think, folks? Should we just pack it in there? Any other parting thoughts for the rest of Rec Poker Nation? Not seeing any. I want to thank Running Aces, Hotel, Racetrack, and Casino, Website Amp, of course, Ben Yu and Steve Fredlund, who couldn't be here, but John, Chris, Jacob, Jim, Kim, and Rob. Thanks, everybody, and we'll see you again next week.